Hello everyone, I'm Tori.
And I'm Kariana.
And welcome to God in All Things. And this is the final episode of our first year of doing the podcast. Amazing. We made it. You guys made it.
One full year.
It's amazing. So
thank you to those who did make it with us. One full year.
And if you've just recently started listening, awesome. You can go back and listen to the rest if you haven't. And yeah, we're taking a break through the month of July. So this is going to be, I think this is going out, June
17th.
17th.
So this will go out June 17th, and so a little bit more than just July.
Yes. So the rest of June and then July and then probably a little bit into August.
Yeah, we'll come back after our Shakespeare Festival weekend.
That will be our first one. Will be our Shakespeare Festival special again, which we love doing. So
yeah, so about a 2-month break total.
Yes. So just be aware of that. If you want to re-listen or whatever, that is great. We will still be active on Instagram, probably posting a few things, so you can look on there for any updates or just fun little reels, things like that.
We'll definitely post through said Shakespeare Festival weekend.
Yes, we will be posting through that for sure, and I will still be posting on my other channel as well, Good Strong Words, so that's another place you can see me and potentially Kariana a little bit as well, although she's going to be gone for several weeks of our break, which is part of why we're taking a break.
But maybe I'll find some cool foreign bookstores that will end up on Instagram.
Super fun.
Stay tuned to find out where.
That will be so fun. Anyway, so this is going to be a little bit of a different episode because it's our kind of finale and we've lasted a year and we just want to kind of reflect a little bit, have kind of a discussion about that. So we've decided to pick our top 5 favorite episodes each. Favorite being relative, because I think all of them have something about them that we've liked or really found interesting and had great discussions.
I won't say which. I think there's only been one that afterwards we were both like, nah.
Yeah. But even that one, I mean, when I went to edit it, it was enjoyable to listen to. It wasn't bad.
So our viewers don't know, obviously, which one.
Yes, hopefully. I don't know. Maybe they could pick up one that they don't really like. But anyway. So let's just jump right into this. We're just going to discuss, our gospel principle that we discussed, as well as just other things that made it just a fun discussion opportunity. I'll start and we'll just kind of go back and forth. And I'm going to start with one that I think is probably on both our lists. I'm going to guess, and that is The Sound of Music.
Okay.
I don't know if that's on your list, but
it's on my list.
It is on your list. Okay. So we can just jump into it. Our first one for both of us is Sound of Music. I feel like it's the gospel principle that weaknesses becoming strengths, the way we interpreted that and that discussion in my study beforehand and things like that just really made me rethink that phrase in such a wonderful way. And I feel like since we've done that episode, it's come up so much in my head of just realizing these things that I think are weaknesses aren't necessarily actually weaknesses. Some of them are, obviously. Sometimes we obviously do have weaknesses, but there are a lot of things that the world can make us feel like are weaknesses, but in the right context, they actually are great strengths and they help us come closer to God and bring other people closer to God. And it just really helps me see the way God builds his kingdom, and it's just been amazing. It also was just kind of a fun one to discuss because it's just a classic and it's a childhood favorite of mine. We love Julie Andrews. I had a lot of fun discussing it, and it's probably the episode I actually think about the most.
Okay.
From just with our discussion, and yeah, I just really loved it. What did you like about it?
Well, going off of what you were just saying for a second, I also think it's kind of fun that it has some early meaning to our relationship as well. It's one of the first movies that we watched together for our movie nights when we were becoming friends.
Yeah, cute.
I think first one was Phantom, right?
Yes.
We decided to watch musicals together. That's when we went from being coworkers to friends. Was when we were like, do you want to do a monthly musical night? So we watched Phantom, and then we watched Sound of Music. Yeah. And you're actually the reason I fell in love with Captain Von Trapp. I had never really thought about him before, and then you were fangirling over him, and I was like, hold up. am I in love with Captain Von Trapp? And then I was. And then we saw Sound of Music at our second Shakespeare festival together as well.
Right, yeah.
And so, yeah,
dang,
it's kind of that like,
line.
yeah,
what the heck?
yeah, exactly.
We didn't even realize. That's so funny.
So it makes it kind of a fun one for us. And then, yeah, I did think it was really cool because it was one of our earlier episodes. What, episode 4?
Yeah.
I think it was the first one that I remember. If I'm remembering right, it was the first one where I remember kind of like us bouncing off of each other in a way where like our discussion opened my eyes to new ideas, you know, where it was like we had different interpretations of things and different ideas about things, and we both brought different ideas to the conversation of weaknesses and strengths, where I was like, wow, like I had my ideas and my insights and now they're doubled between the two of us, you know? So I really love that more kind of like technical aspect of the conversation. And then, yeah, like you said, it's just a fun one to discuss.
Yeah.
Sound of Music is just great, and it's a powerful topic. So,
I feel like I love that. I feel like we need to try to do more musicals during our next year of doing this, because that was fun. Singing in the Rain was fun. It's not on my list, but and I don't know if it's on yours, but I thought it was still
it's a
fun one to discuss.
And musicals are awesome.
And like you can get different, it just has so many dynamics to it, because it's like the plot and the characters and stuff, but also the music and the lyrics that add a whole other dimension to the story. It's just awesome.
Yeah, they offer a whole new insight, because I remember us going almost song by song within the Sound of Music, and her like, I have confidence in me. Like, we would talk about these songs where if it was just a non-musical movie, like she would just have like walked to the house and moved on, you know? Whereas instead we had this whole inner thought and interesting ideas and extra emotion to like contemplate and break down with it. So it adds a whole new dynamic of ideas to discuss.
Yeah, that's such a good example that I have confidence of just, because you're getting... I feel like it builds up, whereas other films, you're right, we would just kind of move past it. But like books, we're able to get into characters' minds. And
similarly,
so we have, very similarly, but it wouldn't take us as long time. Hey!
No wonder we love musicals. They're like books.
They're basically like books. They have the dimensions.
And Shakespeare, you have the little asides where you get to hear what the thoughts are.
We gotta love it.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
Interesting.
Okay.
Well, that's our first one.
Interesting.
Awesome. Okay. Did you have further thoughts on that? I don't want to cut you off on that. I feel like we got it. Okay. All right. Since I gave the first one for both of us, I'll let you take a second one.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm actually going to go back further than that and say Frozen.
Okay. Yeah.
Frozen is one that I thought would be on your list, so I'm a little heartbroken right now, but...
Sorry.
That's okay.
I did consider it, but I also kind of knew you were going to do it.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I don't feel like I'm passionate enough to do it. Plus, I was like, there's enough other ones I could put where we can talk about Frozen. We'll still do it.
Fair enough. Okay. So Frozen, again, like... I think some of the early episodes stuck with me just because they were the early episodes. Yes. So there might be an unfair bias there. Forgive me. I'm sorry. But I just, with Frozen, I just thought it was so cool. Obviously, Pride and Prejudice was so fun, right? Yes. Frozen was episode 2. So we did Pride and Prejudice. And then Frozen, it just felt like Pride and Prejudice, there's just like obviously so much going on, and there's so much to the characters, and it's a masterfully written novel, so there's so much to discuss there. And with Frozen, it's, it's an animated children's cartoon, right? But we just were able to dig so deep into it. And I think, as somebody who studied English in school, right, like my whole major was diving into text and pulling more out of it than anybody believes is there. So it's something that I am used to doing and know how to do and have experienced. But Frozen was like, I don't know, it felt completely different versus studying at my liberal school with a bunch of English people. Like looking at this Disney movie from a gospel perspective and realizing like how much we could pull about the gospel there, you know, and everybody early on in the podcast kind of making fun of the idea and like, what are you going to talk about with Frozen? And this doesn't make any sense. Like being able to and seeing so much of God and of the gospel in Frozen, and that the whole idea of purpose of life, I think it really kind of like how you were describing The Sound of Music. Like I know the stuff that we talked about with the purpose of life in Frozen, like just hit me in a way that really made me think. Like Frozen has never looked the same to me since then. Like the characters are so much more real and the story is so much more real in a relatable way. Like I understand the purpose of life and what I'm doing and why I'm here so much better because of them and their examples and what they taught me in studying and preparing for that episode. So again, just kind of like the early experience with the podcast where I was like learning so much just about what we were doing, and then at the same time like understanding that gospel principle even further through the film, which is the whole point of what we're doing here. That one was particularly impactful for me.
I love that. I feel like our whole purpose here is to train our minds to just be able to see God in all of this media, all of this entertainment. I do feel like our Frozen discussion really it wasn't our first episode, it was our second, but it really like was the first one that set us off on how we were going to do it, just like organization wise and stuff.
We did. Well. We set up Pride and Prejudice differently.
Yes, compared to all of the others, and the Frozen one was the one where we kind of got in our groove a little bit more. And I mean, we always call back to the "What do you need?" So that's another
true.
One that we just call back to
our quotes of devotion by perfect men started with Frozen.
Started with Frozen and Kristoff,
that's
the perfect
so
Disney
funny.
man.
It does not feel like a year ago.
But,
oh my heavens! When you think about it like that,
it's
that's
so
crazy.
True. But it is.
Yeah.
It is, and I liked too that it was one that we were able to do both films, because I just feel like it added so much. I mean, those two films are some of the best like sequel kind of situations in Disney, in my opinion. I really love that, and I just feel like the characters do have so much heart, and there's a lot of focus on relationships and loving one another. So that discussion of the purpose of life, like you were bringing up, was just so meaningful, because relationships is where it's at.
That's where it lies. Yeah. And I think, on a personal, vulnerable note, like it's something that I struggle with a lot, you know, like it's a very common thought in even like logically knowing and even having the gospel. Like it's one of those things where like I have to fight with myself, you know, I know this, but Captain America, sometimes I struggle to believe it, right? Yes. Like I just all the time, one of my greatest struggles is just, why am I bothering with any of this? You know, why am I here? What is even the point? Why are all of us here and like doing who cares what and having kids and raising them to do who cares what to die, you know, like, and again, like I have answers to those questions, but my mind and my heart just don't always accept them. And so I frequently, like, it's pretty common for my favorite scriptures and my favorite things to tend towards that topic, just because it's such a constant, prevalent struggle for me to wonder, like, why am I even bothering with any of this? So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. That was great.
Gotta bring in a little bit for our lighthearted. It's too lighthearted an episode.
Yes.
Gotta be serious.
Get a little more serious. All right. Well, for my second one, this is one you may have potentially. Okay. We will find out. But we're going to go to the next episode that we did, which was A Man Called Ove, our episode 3.
That one I thought about putting on, but I was ultimately like, I'll do something else instead.
So I I will bring it up. Okay. And we can talk a little bit about it.
So we're going to alternate more than we expected. Yes. That's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. That is fun. So A Man Called Ove, that one we discussed, Angels Among Us, and it's just a cute story, first of all. I love the story. Like, I just think about it regularly.
Honestly, I think of any of the books we've done, if I was to recommend, like, go read a book, I think it would be A Man Called Ove. Even with my Victorian heart. Like, I think if I was going to be like, everyone go read a book, it would be A Man Called Ove. That we've done for the podcast. Yeah, I don't know about in all of them. But still.
Yeah. Why?
It's just... It's so good.
It's just so good.
It's just so good.
Fair enough. It's great writing.
I know we have my favorite book on here, but you can't recommend Wuthering Heights to everyone, you know? So it doesn't work. But A Man Called Ove, I can recommend to everyone. Yes. It's just so beautiful.
Most people would at least appreciate it, for sure. Yeah. It's just sweet and very honest. He's so a grumpy old man. We just love him. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, the book is amazing, like we just said, but also that Angels Among Us discussion and how that is explored in that book of we see people who are living, who are acting as angels for people. Our main character has angels coming into his life, but he's also an angel in their lives. And just there were just so many dynamics of angels in that story. Angels even on the other side of the veil, helping out, that kind of thing. Having a cat be like a symbolic angel in his life as well. And I just loved that exploration and reminder of all of the different ways God sends his people to each other and to help each other. I think building off of that, I have thought a lot about the gathering of Israel in the last year and our opportunity to be a part of God's kingdom on earth. Like yes, in the next life we'll be able to be part of the celestial kingdom and have all of the blessings that go along with that, and that's so exciting and something to look forward to, but God understands that waiting for that is hard, and so God gives us a little bit of that in this life by bringing us together and allowing people on different sides of the veil to really touch each other's lives, that like the hearts of the children to the fathers, hearts of the fathers to the children scripture is really well explored in this book. I really loved that. And it's another one that I've thought a lot about as I, try to reach out myself and also see other people struggling with various types of grief. I would have cut it out, but Kariana was asking if we did this episode around the time that my grandma passed away back in November. And it was several months earlier, but still that connection of my grandpa especially losing someone who he loves so much, like Ove loved his wife, and seeing that in real time and being able to see little signs that my grandma is an angel for him too, and that we have the opportunity to be angels for him. And A Man Called Ove obviously is fictional, but it really is exploring such real experiences, and I think that's why it's so touching, is because it's exploring real experiences in relationships, which are the most meaningful things we can have on earth. They're the most divine celestial things we have on earth. That's why the sealing ordinance is the most important. The crowning jewel, I guess, is maybe a better way to say it, of the covenant path, is because the relationships are what make us celestial. And so I really loved our discussion for that. It's one that I have thought of a lot, and it's just a cute book. Like Kariana said, go read it. It's so cute and so good, and the film is great, and just love it. Absolutely.
You can convince yourself that it's sad, but it's only if you're not paying attention.
Yes. It's actually very hopeful and sweet.
It's so good.
Love it. And it's exploring sad things, but it's doing it in a way that brings God into it, even if on page the word God is never actually said, which there's such power in that, and I love that.
Yeah.
All right, number 3, Kariana, what have you got next?
So here's the one that I was wondering if would end up on your list. Okay. And that is Jane Eyre.
No, but I did think about that one as well. It was considered.
It's almost like we considered all of them.
Yes. Well.
Okay. Jane Eyre, I don't know if I have anything deep and meaningful to say on Jane Eyre.
It was kind of just a fun discussion.
It was so
it was really fun. And it was our longest one.
It was our longest, yes, and I remember just never wanting it to end like I did, because it was late at night and I was ready to go home.
We were tired.
But that was back when we were filming at your parents' house, and I was like, I want to go home. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But it was just it was my first time reading the novel, and I just loved the novel. And you remember I was in a place where like I hadn't read a Victorian novel in a while, and between A Man Called Ove and a couple of other books, I was like, maybe Victorian literature isn't like the only literature for me. And then I read Jane Eyre and I was like, nope, Victorian literature is the only literature for me.
I remember now. Yes.
And so I just loved it so freaking much. And then our conversation, I just wanted to talk about everything. You tried to skip over a plot point and I was like, what are you doing? I was like, are you kidding me? How can you skip over this?
I don't have anything gospel principle related to talk about with it.
Now with other books and movies, I've been like, yeah, let's skip it. Whatever the last long book we did was, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. There were plot points. I was like, skip them. Like, whatever, you know? Like, we gotta move on. But with Jane Eyre, I was like, what?
We gotta talk about it all.
We gotta talk about everything. Yeah, so I just had so much fun reading it, and I had so much fun talking about it. And obviously, I mean, that's an easy one just because Jane herself is so Christ focused and godly. Like, she is such a great example. She has, she's a human being and she has her flaws and weaknesses, but she is such a great example of someone who's striving to be Christ-like in everything that she does. So, obviously there are like really powerful, inspiring moments in the book as well, which kind of made it almost made it easy and like less stressful to try to like find things, you know? So it was easier to like just be able to have fun with the conversation because Jane is always bringing God into the conversation.
She's always great. Yeah.
So just so fun.
Yes, I agree. I feel like when I was considering to put it on my list, it was one that I agree. It was mostly just a really fun discussion, just very memorable. And I remember being so excited to have you read Jane Eyre because it was your first time reading it too. So like, I was like, this classic Victorian novel, like the Victorian novel in a lot of ways, honestly. And so, yeah, it really was a lot of fun. If you haven't listened to those episodes, you should, because they were great. They were a lot of fun.
Jane is great.
Yes. Great example. Love it.
And if you don't know the difference between Jane Austen and Jane Eyre, we've got a great place for you to start.
Yes. Yes, we do. All right, so my third one I'm going to mention is kind of a dual thing, but since we're kind of on more of a strain of like the fun ones that were just great to talk about, and still brought the spirit, obviously, but we're also just kind of fun. The Shakespeare Festival one.
You would choose Shakespeare Festival.
It was so much fun I loved making her do a ranking, first of all, because she hates that.
Somehow this one wasn't considered for my list.
For some reason. But I also loved being able to deep dive into Romeo and Juliet with it. I mean, it was a little bit of a shorter discussion compared to others just because we had done the ranking at the beginning, which was just fun. But it was such a good production of Romeo and Juliet that it was fun to revisit. We surprised ourselves
by even choosing it, which was kind of fun.
Yeah. So it just ended up being a good time. And I love Shakespeare Festival. I do want to give an honorable mention to our other special
book swap
round. Yes, the book swap. I didn't put it on this one just because I didn't like the book. So I felt like there were some negative emotions. If I'm doing it compared to the Shakespeare one special edition, there were some negative feelings in the book swap. But it was also a lot of fun, and it was nice to like. It's okay, you're forgiven. But it was fun to kind of do a little bit of a different experience with finding gospel principles between those two, where we're able to firsthand, real time with the plays, we just saw them, and then being able to discuss them afterwards on here was a lot of fun with adding the gospel principles, and even while we were on the trip, kind of pondering on that a little bit while we were there too. I just thought it was a lot of fun for us.
And it's like you have one chance. It's kind of high stakes too.
Yes.
It's not like you can go find the clip from the movie or the quote from the book.
Exactly.
Like, even if you find the quote from the play, it's not like it was our production. It was one time, you know, and that's
what
it.
We're saying. Yeah. So it was just really... It was really cool. And then the book swap, similar thing of just like we were able to both approach brand new books that we hadn't ever read and just kind of see what happens and figure things out. And we both did pretty well with finding gospel principles. And I think it was just a great testament to me of how much we were growing by that point too, because that was like halfway through.
Yeah.
When we were able to kind of see how we've been able to train our minds to think more that way. And I hope we can continue to do that because I love doing that. And it just helps me feel closer to God too, which is just always great. But yeah, I think our special episodes were just fun and also really awesome growth opportunities for us in the podcast. And I just loved it.
I love it. I'm so glad because sometimes the specials feel concerning to me, including this one. I'm like, are we not doing enough? Should we be taking a break? Is this good enough? Do people care about this?
Right.
So I'm glad that they brought you so much joy.
Yes,
that makes it all worth it.
I think they're fun.
I don't know. I think they're a good time, but yeah, that's
they didn't speak to you as much.
Yeah,
fair enough. That's all right.
Not as much, which is fine. I think it is important. I want us to seem like real people. I want us to just, you can see our friendship and us just like chatting.
Have a good time.
Yeah, less scripted and reading notes and making points and more just like, here we are.
We're just gonna chat, see how this goes.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good stuff.
What are we on? Fourth? The fourth one?
Fourth, yep. My fourth one. Our fourth, I don't know. Yeah, choosing from these middle ones was kind of hard because, I don't remember all of them as well. There aren't as many. Again, like those beginning ones like stood out for a lot more reasons. Yeah. And the recent ones I remember better and the middle ones are kind of like, they happened. I liked them all, Yeah. So this one, I'll admit, is a little bit of a random choice, but it does, it does stick out, and there were things that I really liked about it. So I chose Captain America, the First Avenger. I guess one thing about it that was fun is actually I love having my mind changed. And so that was one thing, was being able to be like, last time I watched the movie just kind of being more meh about it and not really falling in love with Captain America, to having a lot more respect for him, And I wouldn't say that I did a full 180, maybe like a 160, because as we talked about it, I was like, no, there are still some things that I would like change about his character in this movie, but my eyes were opened a lot more to him and how powerful and meaningful a character he is. And it's almost like Jane Eyre as well, where like he himself strives to be so Christ-like and so godly, and I just respect that so much. And it's not necessarily like what my goal is with this podcast, to find easy characters to talk about, but it is kind of like, it's nice and almost in the modern day reassuring and hopeful when somebody's willing to write a character who has such a strong testimony and faith in God, and so that's really nice. And anyway, and the idea of believing in your knowledge, I also think that's another principle that I think is so powerful, because we've talked about a lot of really important principles, and that's not like charity, where the scriptures are like, you have to have charity or like you have no chance, it's not one of those kinds of principles, but it's the kind of principle where if you don't have it, it's really hard to have a testimony of anything else, if you don't really believe in what like I referenced earlier, then what isn't helping you. And so it's just kind of this all encompassing, super important. No matter who you are, you probably need to work on it in some way. You know, there's one part of your testimony that's lacking in your belief, right? No matter what it is. And so maybe you're a master at charity and the charity one was like, oh yeah, that was nice, you know? But there's something that you need to focus on. And so I like that kind of general applicability where we could talk about it and I could say, yeah, this is what I struggle with. And, oh yeah, this is what I don't really believe in. And, you know, and those kinds of things, and have, again, his example. I love being able to feel like I can really learn from the characters as well. Like with Frozen, I think that's a common factor between those two, is that I just love being able to watch. And as I study and as we talk about it, being able to feel like, wow, this character, like reading the scriptures, you know, this God has testified through this character, and I'm now learning from him as a type and shadow of Christ in certain ways.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like that principle, the believe in your knowledge, really is such a relationship with God builder as well, which there's just something extra special. I mean, all of it technically is, you know,
of course.
But when there's a little bit more of that personal emotional connection that's being discussed, which I feel like believing in your knowledge, like you're believing in this knowledge you've gained of God and who he is, and really believing in that just brings him so much closer to you and brings you so much closer to him. And there's just something that's always so much more empowering about that than almost any other thing that you can learn in the gospel, because obviously God is the best relationship you can have, the most important that you should seek out regardless of where you are at in life. And so, yeah, that was another episode that I didn't think about as hard because there was another one that's along a similar line that I liked a little bit better, but I did consider it because, yeah, it was a really good principle, and Captain America's just great, so... All right.
Okay, so which one won out over it?
So the one that went out over it was Thor.
Thor?
I put Thor.
We swapped.
We did.
That's amazing. I almost considered Thor just because I was like, I'm going to choose Captain America and not Thor. I'm in love with Thor. But then I decided Captain America, so I'm so excited to know what you have to say.
Yes. So if y'all don't know, if you forgot from the last episode or didn't listen to it or whatever, Thor is my least favorite Marvel film. Not the character. I love Thor. He's great. But the film, the first Thor, is like the worst to me, and it still is. This discussion did not change that fact.
Did you do a 160?
I did like a 90.
A 90. Okay. And I'll take 90. I'll take 90.
Mostly, but the thing I love about the first Thor is Loki, and that's kind of what made the conversation. So
that's true. Thor was an interesting one in the sense that it was almost two conversations.
Exactly.
Thor's story and Loki's story.
Yeah, so that's what made it stand out to me, was we really had this conversation about Thor and where he's at and the principles we learned from him about pride and about his other issues, which are many, unfortunately, to start with. Pride being the central one, of course.
Yes.
But also being able to learn about Loki and how he could have gone a different direction than he did, but he kind of made things worse for himself. And our principle was agency and accountability. So seeing that on both sides and seeing how Loki doesn't take accountability for his actions, and he has his agency and he uses it, and also other people's impact on his agency because of Odin specifically making certain choices that make it so Loki can't fully use the range of his agency because of his lack of knowledge and understanding. And then having Thor, who actually has a lot more opportunity to use his agency the way he wants, where he's not being limited the same way Loki is, he ends up being more accountable, and seeing just the different aspects of that. And it was just such an interesting, memorable discussion to me. I just think those two characters and their dynamic together are so interesting. I'm really excited for when we're able to get to Thor 2 and just see see how that further develops and stuff, because I think it really, that principle is actually central to their whole relationship with each other and their differences. And so, yeah, I just thought it was a lot of fun. And like you said, it was basically like 2 conversations in one. So it was kind of a longer one as well. It was probably almost the same length as Jane Eyre, just because even though it was a film, which tends to be some of the shorter ones, it was, very dynamic and a lot going on between the 2 of them. And I just really thought it was a lot of fun. I do want to throw in an honorable mention for Avengers, because that was the other one I thought about with Marvel.
Okay.
Extra hard, because I do remember when we did that one, feeling like that was one of our better Marvel discussions. So if you haven't listened to that, go listen to that. But yeah, Thor was the one that probably stood out to me the most. Honestly, a lot of the Marvel ones were kind of just really good and stood out to me.
We love Marvel.
We love Marvel, and there's a lot of great principles in there.
Yes.
So anyway, but yes, that was my Marvel pick, was Thor. Okay. And yeah,
I love that we both just had to have a Marvel pick in there. Didn't plan that. That just happened.
But also we did several Marvel episodes.
It was bound to happen.
To sneak in.
No, you bringing up like kind of the dual conversation we had, that actually does, like, I think part of the reason I skipped past Thor was because it felt like a little too go-to for me. You know, I'm like, I don't want to choose Thor just because like,
it's Thor.
Same with Iron. Maybe that's why I chose Captain America. Subconsciously, I wanted an Avengers movie, and Iron Man and Thor felt like cheater ways out because they're just my favorite. But anyway, so yeah, you bringing up that conversation, I really, really loved that. So I thought that was so interesting. First of all, it was another one where my mind was changed because my mind was opened to Loki so much, to the point, it's interesting because it's not like he's justified necessarily. Like he uses his agency and he doesn't take accountability, you know, and puts himself where he's at. And so once I felt more like I could understand his journey, but still didn't have to justify his actions, I had a lot more respect for his character and appreciation for what he went through, while not feeling like I had to necessarily appreciate him as a person, you know?
Yes.
And then just being able to delve into Thor's, I just love Thor so much. And so it was, so on both sides, it was just a lot of fun and really interesting being able to kind of track their parallel path. And I am super excited. I remember we came up with an idea for Thor 2 already, and I have it in my notes. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, I don't remember what
but
it is.
But I wrote down notes because we were like, oh yeah, that would be such a cool direction to go after this. So we're ready with Thor 2. It's coming.
We'll get it. That's exciting.
I love it.
Actually. Okay.
And agency is just such... I feel like the more I love learning about agency. Yeah. I feel like the more I learn about agency, the more I can just appreciate Heavenly Father. Like, honestly, it's just such a powerful gift. It's like there are too many thoughts and words to, you know, and lessons and quotes and like just...
We brought it up a lot in a lot of episodes.
It comes up it just everywhere because ultimately that's what we're using all the time. Yeah. I mean, it's constant, and it goes back. It's eternal too. It goes back to the war in heaven. Like from the beginning, we used our agency, and that continues until the very end. You know, it's ours always. And the more I learn about it, the more I just recognize like the power that gives me and the freedom it gives me and the love Heavenly Father has for me and the trust that he has in me. Like there's just so much to it the more you continue to learn about it. And so I just think, I guess, encourage everybody to learn about agency because it really is just so, it's everything. Without agency, like actually none of this matters. Which is why it comes up all the time.
Yeah. My dad was talking to some youth about the For the Strength of Youth pamphlet, the new one. Which is about making choices. So it's a lot about agency. And he was kind of talking about, he was asking us beforehand, like, what our thoughts were on it that he could share with them and stuff. And I was like, I just had realized at that point, and a lot of it was from discussions that we'd had with Thor and other episodes we've had where we've just thought about agency, and also like learning about the temple recently for my calling and stuff. I just had this realization that, you know, they talk a lot about like the plan of salvation, and the through line is Christ's atonement, which is very true, and that is the through line. But atonement. I think the second through line is agency. Yeah. Like the atonement and agency are the key points throughout God's plan for us, and why it works and why it makes sense is because of those two things. And I have, like you said, just so much more respect and appreciation for agency the more I learn about it. And so I think Thor was a huge part of that. That discussion was a huge part of me kind of kicking off that journey a little bit over the past several months, of me coming to understand that a lot better too, which is another reason why it was a great episode, or a couple episodes, I guess. Part 1 and part 2, but it was just so good. So good.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Are we down to our last one?
Last ones. Ready? My last one. Man, they go by so fast.
I know.
I keep calling it one of our more recent ones, but it's still like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes ago. That's 12 weeks.
Gosh.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, it's Madagascar.
Oh my gosh, that's my last
That's yours too.
Yeah, that was the one that I was like, I bet we both have that. After you said, I remembered what the one recently.
So that was the recent one that we... Okay.
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
What she's referencing, we said... There was one recent episode where afterwards we were like, dang, that was just such a good, fun episode. And then when Tori and I came up with the idea to do this episode and what we were doing with it and stuff, I was like, crap, what was that episode?
So we were like, wow,
that was such a good episode. Now I can't remember what it was. So I was scrolling through and I was like, okay, I think that's it, but I couldn't remember for sure. So I'm so glad that I was right and didn't just choose a random episode. It still would have been good. But
yes, either way.
Either way, but that's funny. So that's good. Now we started on the same one and we get to end on the same one.
Love it.
Perfect. So, okay, what did I love about Madagascar? I mean, it was, I guess, probably also... similar to Frozen. Frozen is like my basis of loving episodes, apparently. Everything that I love is like Frozen.
Yes.
I freaking loved that episode. Anyway, so just kind of similar with what I was talking about there, where it's this cheesy animated movie. First of all, I loved rewatching this movie.
Yes,
I did not remember how clever and funny this movie was. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And funny enough, you guys may be surprised by this, it's the only one Tori and I have watched together.
Yes.
For our podcast.
Yes.
Every other movie, we live together. Yes, we record our podcast together. No, we do not watch the movies together.
No.
It's actually a little bit weird, but schedules are schedules.
It's true.
And so it was perfect timing. We watched Madagascar together. That was so fun, knowing that we were going to talk about it with the podcast.
Yes.
It was such a cute movie. What I was saying with Frozen, it's similar in the sense that it was just so fun delving so deep into just this cheesy, cute animated movie. Maybe I want us to do more animated movies because I just think it's so fun, like seeing all that you can pull out. And it was actually the same thing too, where my boyfriend, I told him we were doing Madagascar and he was like, what are you going to talk about with that? And I went off. I was like, all of these things. There's so many. And he was like, oh yeah. I'm like, stop questioning us. All things testify of Christ, okay?
We know what we're doing.
Believe it. Okay. Believe in your knowledge, okay? Yeah, I just loved being able to learn more about the characters, and by learning more about them, learn about Christ through them, you know, which is a beautiful life lesson too. Absolutely. Get to know people, and through them you'll find some way to learn about Christ. But yeah, it's just not one that I ever would have, like, going into it thought like, oh yeah, this movie is going to bring me closer to God, you know? But then it was just so talking about the natural man and talking about divine nature, like it was just so clear suddenly. It was like these characters are going through hard things, you know, harder things than maybe I've experienced, you know, like they're going through hard things and it's set up in this cheesy, cute, funny way, but this is real and they're managing it the best that they can. These are all good people who are struggling, who want to do the right thing and aren't doing it perfectly. And I can learn so much through that because that's me, you know? Yeah. And I just love, I don't know why I connect to that so strongly through animated movies, apparently, but maybe musicals just the realization.
And animated movies, what we need to do more.
Yes. Musicals, I knew I connected to people strongly through. But yeah, these I don't know what it is, but just, I mean, I've always been a primary girly. Everybody who knows me knows that primary is where I think the gospel is at. If you're struggling with your testimony, go to primary. It's worked for me plenty of times. And so maybe that's part of it. Maybe my spirit just, I mean, I guess I already know this. My spirit just loves the simple answers and it loves simplicity and it loves... I mean, I love cartoons and that kind of stuff in general. And so I think I just connect with that really, really well. And in this particular context, I love like being able to prove and understand so much better, like how much meaning and awesomeness is hidden within there behind all of the funny jokes.
Yes. I love that. I agree. I feel like the shock factor of us, like me going into this, I really didn't expect it to be that. I was like, I guess we'll just see how this goes. And then it ended up being such a good discussion. So I feel like I didn't even fully find myself totally sold on it. I mean, I had like my notes and I was surprised by some of the things I picked out and stuff, but I feel like the conversation itself just was like, wow,
solidified
this is good. Yes, this is really good. That. I feel like you pretty much said everything I would say about it, so I don't want to be redundant. So I think I'm going to pick a different fifth one because I realized there's one.
Excuse me.
It's still the Madagascar, but just to add another thing, because I realized there's one that I cried during, and I feel like I have to mention it.
All right. You and your honorable mentions. You can have a third honorable mention. We can have
honorable mentions. I'm just trying to let everybody know that all of them are great.
Yes. And I mean, ultimately, it's still...
Yes, there were still lot
less
that I
than
did
10
not
episodes
mention.
that we're talking about. Yes.
So the one I'm going to change my fifth one to is The Hobbit, because
that one needs to be mentioned. Yes, you're right.
Yes.
You're right.
Because I did
think about that one.
We both did. I don't know if Kariana's crying was on screen because
I was gonna say, did I cry during the episode?
You got emotional, but it was thinking about Lord of the Rings and Samwise, so we were like, we're not there yet. So I skipped it in my editing. But you will see more of it, I'm sure, when we get to the rest of Lord of the Rings.
I forgot I started crying about Samwise.
And I
love this.
The Hobbit is so good, and Lord of the Rings is so good.
It's so good.
So, of course, it was just, made... I didn't originally have it in my list because I just feel like it was, an obvious... obviously that was a good discussion because it's The Hobbit and J.R.R. Tolkien and Middle-earth, it was bound
Convince
to
me
be.
There's a better writer out there. Oh my gosh.
Amazing. So, I won't go too much into it because technically I'm adding it on when I had Madagascar, but I figured, our whole goal
we
was
can be
to have,
lenient. You can switch things. Last minute.
And since we did talk about Madagascar, I was like, no, I gotta bring up The Hobbit, and I feel like discussing the one that we talked about, Home in.
I was gonna say, Home is just such a beautiful and touching topic, and it can be sensitive for a lot of people in a lot of ways, but that's only because it matters so much, and it really is, especially when you can find that home, it's just so... It's everything,
it's so good. It's and everything. Bilbo is just an amazing character who just loves his house.
He loves his house.
And him just carrying a seed to plant in his garden is the cutest little thing. Just love it, and just love his friendship with the dwarves, who are not very likable beings to be around, but he just ends up getting along with them. And there's just so much magic and just the connections there. I loved that discussion too. And I'm so excited for us to get back to Lord of the Rings
oh my gosh.
in a couple months.
It's going to be different because The Hobbit, it still has that childishness.
Yes.
It's still that kind of simplistic,
Lord of the Rings is going to have a lot more
child.
crying in it. I'm
Lord
not
of the
going
Rings
to lie. It just will, because I will cry I cry all the way through the movies. I just cry every 10 minutes throughout the films, which for 3.5-hour films, that's a lot of crying. So anyway,
and it's funny because in the first one there's no reason to cry, which means that it's just all the stuff from like the third one that you're crying about.
I'll
for
literally
the first
just cry listening to the Shire music, and then but at the end when Sam chases Frodo down, that's cry-worthy. For sure.
Endings have cry-worthy. I'm just saying most of the first movie is pretty chill.
Yeah, I probably won't cry through most of it, I won't lie, but for the first film. But there's a couple moments, right in the middle with Gandalf, too, even though, it's still emotional.
You're right. You're right.
There's a couple things. And the music. I feel like the music just makes you cry.
The music is beautiful. Yes.
It's so beautifully done.
And now we're talking about Lord of the Rings.
And now we're talking about Lord of the Rings. Anyway, back to Gospel Principles. Home, great.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I love doing this. This is fun. And
that's good.
Thank you to all of you who have watched and listened and continued with us, because we seriously appreciate you and it. We've had such a good time, and it's been such good learning experience and growing experience. I feel like I've grown a lot spiritually through this experience. It's helped me to refocus, and I feel like this break will be actually a good time for me to refocus a little bit with it. I feel like I was kind of getting a little rote in my approach to the podcast. I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes a break helps us to, be able to refocus on why we're doing this.
Yes.
Bringing the spirit back in a little bit into it, rather than that, I have to do it kind of feeling.
Yeah. I was talking about that earlier today. I was like, I'm excited to be excited to go back to it, because it is good, but definitely every 2 weeks I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yes. Oh yeah, gotta do that. Plus it will give us a little bit of time to get ready for some of the bigger books and things, so hopefully we can have those better discussions.
Which will also maybe make it less frustrating to have to go into when it's like, I feel prepared and I'm ready to go.
Yes, we can do this. So we'll get back on track. It will be great.
It'll be great.
So that is it. That is our top 5 episodes-ish with my couple honorable mentions. In every episode, of course, we end with a little quote or a scripture or something that kind of wraps things up. And as we wrap up this first season of God in All Things, I want to end with a quote by President Russell M. Nelson. He said, "We are to seek in every way we can to hear Jesus Christ, who speaks to us through the power and ministering of the Holy Ghost." Our whole podcast is about seeking God in all things, recognizing that the light of Christ truly is in everyone, and that pretty much every piece of art that is created can lead us back to Christ if we are in tune with the Spirit, with His Holy Spirit. And so as we take a break and as you continue to read things and watch things, I hope that all of you will also seek that greater connection with the Holy Spirit of God and God's desire to teach us in every way He can, because He is there and He does want to teach you what He can, and seeking out that knowledge and understanding regardless of what you're doing is the best way to get as much of it as possible. And I truly believe and know that to be true, and say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Do you have any further thoughts or feelings you want to share?
I don't. I'm good.
Okay, sounds good. So, again, thank you so much for watching, for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, whatever you need to do to support our channel is much appreciated. If you have any thoughts on things you would like us to do, any specific films or books that you would like to see us do, or if you just would like us to approach things in a different way or something, please let us know. You can direct message us on Instagram, or you can, of course, comment on one of our YouTube videos if you would like to. Also, remember, you can keep up with us on Instagram at God and All Things Pod, as well as at my channel, Good Strong Words. You can see a little bit from both of us, both of those places. Thank you again so much for joining with us on this episode and on all of the other episodes. We hope you are having a wonderful week. Keep remembering to see God in all things, and we will see you in several weeks. Have a good week and a good few months. Bye.